Cassandra, daughter of Priam, princess of Troy. You've probably heard the version where she's just the crazy one screaming about the future while nobody listens. That's not quite right. She's one of the most important figures in the entire Trojan cycle, and the Greeks gave her more stage time than most people realize. Aeschylus wrote her an entire scene in the Agamemnon. Euripides put her in the Trojan Women. Virgil, Apollodorus, Pindar, they all kept coming back to this particular woman. Something about her story clearly fascinated them. Apollo wanted her. That's where it starts. The specifics vary depending on who you read, but the broad strokes are consistent. He offered her the gift of prophecy, genuine, accurate knowledge of the future in exchange for her love. Apollodorus tells him most directly. She agreed, she received the gift, and then she changed her mind. Now, the interesting thing about Greek gods is they can't take back a divine gift once it's given. It's a rule. Apollo had a problem on his hands, so he cursed her instead. He let her keep the prophecy. She'd see everything that was going to happen, every death, every disaster with perfect accuracy, but nobody would ever believe her. Some versions say he spat in her mouth. Others say he just altered the gift at its source. Either way, the mechanism is specific and cruel. She doesn't lose the ability. She doesn't go mad, not in the early accounts anyway. She sees the truth, speaks the truth, and watches people walk straight past it every single time. The ancient sources describe what this actually looked like day to day. She'd stand in the streets of Troy and prophesy, not raving, not in the earliest accounts. She'd deliver clear, specific warnings about what was coming. The Trojans would listen, nod, and do nothing. Aeschylus is careful about this detail. He doesn't make the Trojans stupid, he makes them reasonable. They hear a woman making extraordinary claims, and they assess those claims the way any sensible person would. The whole horror of it sits right there. The horse arrives, the moment Cassandra is most remembered for, and the details are worth paying attention to. Virgil writes it in the Aeneid, Book 2. The Greeks have apparently sailed away. They've left this enormous wooden structure on the beach. The Trojans are celebrating 10 years of war, finally over. They're dragging it toward the gates. Cassandra runs out and tells them exactly what's inside. Armed soldiers, a trap. The end of everything they know. She names it specifically. Nobody stops. There's a version in Quintus Smyrnaeus, and this is the detail I find genuinely interesting, where she doesn't just warn them once, she argues, she makes her case. She stands in front of the assembled Trojans and lays out, point by point, what's going to happen if they bring the horse inside the walls. Some of the Trojans, he writes, actually started to believe her. They wavered. For a moment, it almost worked. And then Athena intervened, struck them with a kind of forgetfulness. Even when the curse cracked, the god sealed it shut. They brought the horse in, pulled it through the gates, past the walls that grandfather Laomedon had built, into the heart of the city. That night, Troy celebrated harder than it had in 10 years. Wine, music, the kind of relief that only comes after a decade of siege. Cassandra was somewhere in the city during all of it. The sources don't tell us exactly what she did that night, but she knew. She'd told them, and now she was watching the last few hours of everything she'd ever known tick down to zero. Sometime after midnight, Virgil says the third watch of the night, Sinon opened the belly of the horse. The soldiers inside climbed down into the dark streets. Neoptolemus, Odysseus, Menelaus, Diomedes, they opened the gates from the inside. The Greek fleet, which hadn't actually sailed away at all, had been waiting just behind the island of Tenedos. They poured through. Exactly what Cassandra had described, the names, the timing, the method. She'd given them the entire operational plan. They'd called her mad for it. What followed was a massacre. The Greeks moved through Troy systematically while the city slept. Priam, Cassandra's own father, was killed at his altar by Neoptolemus. The old king had been trying to put on his armor, which is a detail Virgil includes, I think, because it matters. Hector's infant son Astyanax was thrown from the walls. Deiphobus, Polites, one by one the princes fell. Troy didn't go down in battle. It fell in its sleep, drunk and celebrating, exactly the way one woman had said it would. The city burned. That's the image that survived most strongly in the ancient world. Troy at night, flames against the sky. Aeneas carrying his father through the smoke. And somewhere in all of it, Cassandra. She'd run to the temple of Athena. This matters for what happens next. She was at the altar, in the temple, under divine protection. Aeschylus, Euripides, and the little Iliad all confirm this detail. She went to the one place in a burning city that was supposed to be untouchable. Ajax the Lesser found her there. He dragged her from the altar by her hair. Most sources say he raped her in the temple. The statue of Athena, the goddess's own image, supposedly turned its eyes away. This is one of the most serious crimes in the entire Greek mythological tradition. Not only because of what happened to Cassandra, which is awful enough, but because of the sacrilege. You violated a suppliant in a goddess's temple during a war the gods had been managing for a decade. The Greeks who just won immediately understood they created a new problem. Athena was furious, not primarily about Cassandra, if we're being honest, about her temple. The Greeks didn't punish Ajax for what he'd done. Odysseus argued they should stone him, but it didn't happen. So Athena went to Poseidon and arranged for the Greek fleet to be destroyed on the voyage home. The Nostoi, the homecoming stories, are basically a catalogue of divine retributions. Odysseus wandered 10 years. Agamemnon walked into a murder. Ajax drowned in a storm. The victory at Troy cost them nearly everything they had. Cassandra was given to Agamemnon as a war prize. She went to Mycenae with him, knowing, because she always knew, exactly what was waiting. Clytemnestra and Aegisthus had the murder planned down to the bathwater. Aeschylus writes this scene in the Agamemnon, and it's probably the strangest moment in Greek tragedy. Cassandra stands outside the palace doors and prophesies her own death. Out loud, in detail. The chorus listens. They feel something's wrong. They kind of understand her, and then they let her walk inside anyway. She died with Agamemnon, axe or sword, depending on the source. Clytemnestra killed them both. The woman who'd been right about everything, the horse, the fire, the assault, the murder. She died telling the truth one last time to people who couldn't quite make themselves act on it. The Greeks put her on their pottery. They painted her in their temples. They wrote her into their greatest plays. They understood something about what her story meant even 3,000 years ago. They just couldn't say exactly what. I'm not sure we can either. If you want more stories like this, the weird details, the parts nobody tells you, hit subscribe, like the video if it landed, and share it with someone who'd find it interesting. More coming soon.